world full of division and selfishness, imagine a type of love that transcends everything: agape, the highest and most selfless form of love. Join us as we explore how agape not only changes individual lives, but also heals communities and men's hearts. From everyday actions to major community shifts, discover the power of this divine love. Are you ready to embark on this transformative journey?
Part 1. Historical and cultural context. In everyone's life, there are moments when we are faced with the choice between following the call of duty or fleeing from it. This is not only our individual story, but also the tale of Jonah, the prophet tasked by God with a challenging mission to bring a warning to the sin-ridden city of Nineveh. What's special is that Fulton Sheen did not merely recount this story as part of ancient history, but as a reflection into each of our souls and lives. Jonah, a called prophet, chooses to evade his mission. Instead of heading to Nineveh as commanded by God, he boards a ship sailing in the opposite direction, seeking far-off lands. Perhaps deep down, Jonah felt fearful not only of failing in his mission, but also worried that if the people of Nineveh heeded his words and reformed, the forgiveness they received would make him conflicted, believing they deserve punishment. Sheen expands this story into a profound lesson on tolerance and understanding. In his sermon, he challenges the audience to reconsider their own prejudices and hesitations about forgiveness. When Jonah escapes by boat, he carries with him a psychological burden, and so do all others aboard with him. When a storm strikes and the crew begins searching for the cause of the disaster, they turn to casting lots to determine who brought the bad luck. Jonah knows he is responsible and admits it, thereby teaching us lessons in humility and accepting the consequences of our actions. In that moment, Jonah not only confronts the truth about himself, but also faces up to the responsibility he had tried to avoid. This leads him to the ultimate decision of allowing himself to be thrown into the sea, sacrificing himself to save the others. This decision is not just an act of sacrifice, but also a turning point spiritually, where Jonah accepts the mission that God has laid out for him, albeit in the most dire circumstances. The story does not end there. After being swallowed by a large fish, Jonah spends 3 days and nights in absolute darkness, an experience that Sheen compares to dying and being born again. This is a powerful image of spiritual rebirth, not just for Jonah, but also for each of us, as we face and overcome challenges in life. In that darkness, Jonah finds the light of faith and readiness to return to Nineveh to fulfill his mission. Through his sermon, Sheen does not just recount the story of Jonah, but also calls on each of us to find the courage to face our own Ninevehs. Whether these are personal challenges or societal ones, each of us has tasks we would sometimes rather avoid. But the strong message that Sheen wants to convey is that through facing and overcoming these, we can truly be reborn and achieve spiritual fulfillment. These lessons are not just reminders of a bygone era, but also beacons for our modern lives. In the next part of this article, we will delve deeper into the theology and doctrine that Sheen weaves, expanding the meaning of Jonah's story by comparing his sacrifice with that of Christ in the New Testament, and how we can apply these lessons to our daily lives. Part 2. Doctrine and Theology. Continuing from the story of Jonah, Fulton Sheen takes us deeper into the theological lessons he weaved into his sermon. Jonah is not just a historical figure. He also serves as a type, a foreshadowing of Christ in the New Testament. Jonah's ordeal in the belly of the great fish for 3 days and nights is used by Sheen as a metaphorical bridge to connect with the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, who died and was buried for 3 days before his resurrection. This comparison is not merely a storytelling device. It carries profound significance in understanding the teachings of the Bible. Jonah's story becomes a powerful allegory, a lesson on how God uses events and individuals in history to prepare and pave the way for the salvation he offers to all humanity. Sheen explains that, just as Jonah experienced a symbolic death in the belly of the fish, Jesus Christ underwent actual death on the cross to bring new life to mankind. Through this comparison, Sheen invites the listeners to reflect on their own lives. He poses the question, how are we prepared to die so that we may be reborn? This question is both personal and communal. We are called not only to ponder physical death, but also spiritual death. dying to ego, to selfishness, so that we can live a richer and more meaningful life. Sheen continues by delving further into the meaning of sacrifice. He emphasizes that in Christianity, there is no resurrection without suffering. Christ's crucifixion is the pinnacle of the salvation history, a symbol not only of suffering, but also of victory over death and sin. Sheen uses this image to call on each of us to look to the cross, to Jesus Christ's sacrifice, and thereby learn how to accept and overcome the suffering in our own lives. By deeply linking the Old and New Testaments, Sheen not only helps us understand the history and essence of Christian faith, but also opens a path for personal and communal transformation. He suggests that through this understanding, we can learn to face and embrace challenges and sufferings, not just as inevitable parts of life, but also as opportunities for growth and renewal. The next part of this article will explore the application of these lessons in ethics and daily life, where Sheen guides us on how to implement these principles in everyday living, and how each of us can use our hardships and trials as means to achieve personal fulfillment and salvation. Part 3. Ethical Application and Daily Life. In his poignant exploration of Jonah's story and the deeper theological implications, Fulton Sheen transitions seamlessly into the practical and everyday implications of these teachings. This part of his sermon is a call to action, urging each listener to reflect on the way they live their lives in light of the profound truths of sacrifice and redemption. Sheen begins by emphasizing the practical necessity of embodying the lessons of Jonah and Christ in our everyday actions. He points out that knowing the stories and understanding their meanings is only the first step. The true challenge and the true measure of faith is how these lessons are lived out day by day. He challenges his audience to ask themselves, how do I apply the principle of dying to oneself in my own life? How do I make the sacrifices that are required to truly live a life of faith? One of the key aspects that Sheen discusses is the concept of self-denial as a form of spiritual practice. He argues that modern society often shies away from the idea of sacrifice because it is seen as a loss rather than a gain. However, in the Christian context, sacrifice is the path to greater fulfillment and deeper joy. This paradoxical truth is at the heart of Christian teaching, that through giving up, we gain. Through dying, we live. Sheen illustrates this through various examples from everyday life, such as forgiving someone who has wronged us, offering up our time and resources to help those in need, or simply choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. These actions are modern-day equivalents of taking up one's cross, embodying the spirit of sacrifice that both Jonah and Jesus exemplified. Furthermore, Sheen addresses the communal aspect of these teachings. He emphasizes that Christianity is not a solitary religion. It is deeply communal and interconnected. The act of self-denial and taking up one's cross is not just for the individual's spiritual benefit, but also for the betterment of the community and society at large. By living out these principles, we contribute to a culture of selflessness, kindness, and compassion, which are sorely needed in today's world. To drive this point home, Sheen uses the example of the early Christian communities, which were known for their radical commitment to living out the teachings of Christ, often in the face of great personal cost. These communities understood that their faith was not just about personal salvation, but about transforming the world around them through acts of love and sacrifice. As Sheen concludes this part of his sermon, he reiterates the importance of these lessons for contemporary life. He challenges his listeners to not only hear the words of Scripture, but to embody them, to not only celebrate the resurrection, but to participate in it through their daily actions. This participation, according to Sheen, is what true Christianity is all about. It is a faith that does not shy away from the difficult or the painful, but embraces it as a necessary part of the journey towards salvation and redemption. In the next and final part of this series, Sheen will delve into the transformative power of these teachings, exploring how they can not only change individual lives, but also have a profound impact on society and the world at large. This exploration will highlight the ultimate goal of Christian doctrine, not just personal sanctification, but the sanctification of the world through the lived experience of faith. Part 4. Transformative Power and Societal Impact. In the concluding part of his sermon, Fulton Sheen explores the transformative power of Christian teachings on both individual lives and broader society. He delves into how the principles of sacrifice, resurrection, and self-denial, when truly embraced, can catalyze profound changes, not just within the soul of an individual, but also across communities and cultures. Sheen begins by asserting that the true measure of a faith is not merely in its ability to comfort or console, but in its capacity to transform. Christianity, according to Sheen, calls its adherents not just to believe, but to act, to transform their beliefs into actions that uphold the dignity of life, promote justice, and foster peace. This active engagement with faith is what sets apart mere belief from transformative faith. Individual transformation. Sheen emphasizes that personal transformation is the cornerstone of Christian faith. Each individual's journey of faith is a microcosm of the larger story of redemption told throughout the scriptures. Just as Jonah was transformed through his ordeal in the belly of the whale, and just as Christ was transformed through his death and resurrection, so too are Christians called to experience transformation through their daily acts of faith. This personal transformation involves a profound inner change, a shift from self-centeredness to other-centeredness. It requires embracing the cross, which symbolizes not only suffering, but also the ultimate love and sacrifice. Through personal struggles, whether they are moral, physical, or spiritual, individuals learn the true meaning of sacrifice and are gradually shaped into more compassionate, empathetic, and loving beings. Societal transformation beyond individual transformation. Sheen discusses the broader societal impact of these teachings. He argues that when individuals change, societies change. The collective practice of Christian virtues like forgiveness, charity, and selflessness can lead to a more just and peaceful society. He points out historical examples where Christian movements have led to significant social reforms, such as the abolition of slavery and the civil rights movement, which were both deeply rooted in Christian ethics and the courage to live out gospel values. Sheen challenges his audience to consider how they, as individuals and communities, can contribute to societal change. He asks them to reflect on their roles within their families, workplaces, and communities. Are they agents of change and harbingers of hope? Do they bring the light of Christ into the dark places of the world? Do they stand up for the oppressed, feed the hungry, and shelter the homeless? Global impact. Finally, Sheen expands his vision to the global scale. In a world fraught with division, conflict, and despair, the message of Christ offers a beacon of hope and a blueprint for healing. By living out the principles of the gospel, Christians can play a crucial role in fostering global peace and understanding. Sheen envisions a world where Christians, empowered by their faith and guided by the Holy Spirit, help bridge divides between nations and cultures, advocating for peace and reconciliation. As Sheen wraps up his sermon, he reiterates that the power of Christianity lies in its ability to transform, from the inner transformation of an individual's heart to the large-scale changes in societies and the world. The faith is not passive, it is dynamic and active. It calls upon each follower to be a living testament to the values of the gospel, to actively participate in the resurrection through lives of service, sacrifice, and unconditional love. By living in this transformative way, Christians not only bear witness to the truth and vitality of their faith, but also contribute to the sanctification of the world, echoing the redemptive mission of Christ himself. This is the ultimate challenge and the ultimate promise of Christianity, as presented by Fulton Sheen, a call to not only believe in the resurrection, but to live it out every day, thus changing the world one act of love at a time. Part 5. Living the Resurrection. Fulton Sheen concludes his series of teachings by delving deeper into what it means to live the resurrection in everyday life. He articulates a vision of Christian living that goes beyond mere adherence to rituals or doctrines, advocating for a vibrant, active faith that influences every aspect of one's behavior and interactions with others. Daily acts of resurrection. Sheen emphasizes that living the resurrection is not confined to spiritual or religious contexts, but is a daily practice that extends into every corner of a believer's life. It is about embodying the values of the gospel in all actions, whether big or small. This means practicing forgiveness in moments of conflict, offering compassion where there is pain, providing support where there is need, and standing up for justice wherever there is oppression. He paints a picture of life where every day is an opportunity to enact small resurrections, moments where the spirit of Christ's love overcomes the pettiness, hatred, or despair that can so easily pervade our daily lives. These acts are what bring the abstract principles of faith into the vivid reality of everyday experience, showing the world what Christian love looks like in action. Creating communities of resurrection. Sheen argues that to truly live the resurrection, Christians must also focus on building communities that reflect these values. This involves more than just individual actions. It requires a collective effort to create environments where the principles of Christian faith are the foundation of community life. Such communities are marked by mutual support, shared responsibility, and a commitment to living out the gospel in every aspect of communal life. These communities act as beacons of hope and centers of resistance against the forces of cynicism and despair in the modern world. They are places where individuals can find strength in shared faith and where the transformative power of the gospel is made visible and tangible. Challenges to living the resurrection. Sheen does not shy away from acknowledging the challenges inherent in this kind of spiritual and communal life. The modern world often values individualism over community, consumption over contribution, and success over service. Living the resurrection, therefore, involves a countercultural choice. It means choosing the way of generosity, humility, and selflessness in a world that often promotes the opposite. He encourages his listeners to persevere in the face of these challenges, drawing strength from their faith and the community around them. This perseverance is not just about enduring, but about actively seeking to influence and transform the world according to the values of the gospel. The ultimate promise. Finally, Sheen speaks to the ultimate promise of living the resurrection, the promise of eternal life and the hope of heaven. However, he reframes these not just as distant future rewards, but as present realities that begin in the here and now through the way Christians live their lives. He teaches that by living in accordance with the principles of the resurrection, believers begin to experience a taste of eternal life here on earth, a life characterized by love, peace, and joy that are the hallmarks of the kingdom of God. Sheen concludes with a powerful call to action, urging his audience to embrace the mission of living the resurrection every day. By doing so, they not only secure their place in eternity, but also bring the light of Christ into the darkness of the world, actively participating in the redemption and sanctification of the world through their daily lives. This vision of active, transformative faith is Sheen's legacy, a reminder that Christianity is not a passive belief system, but a dynamic, living faith that challenges every believer to become an agent of change in the world. Part 6. The cost and joy of discipleship. Fulton Sheen's vision of living the resurrection comes with both a challenge and a reward, the cost of discipleship and the joy that follows it. In this section, Sheen explores the paradox that lies at the heart of Christian life, that true fulfillment and joy are found not in avoiding suffering or hardship, but in embracing them with faith and love. The cost of discipleship. Sheen begins by addressing the inevitable cost that comes with being a follower of Christ. He speaks candidly about the sacrifices required to live a life of true discipleship. These sacrifices may come in many forms: giving up personal ambitions to serve others, standing firm in faith in the face of ridicule, or enduring suffering with grace. He uses the metaphor of the cross, reminding his audience that there is no resurrection without the cross. The cross is not merely a symbol of Christ's suffering, but a call to action for every believer. To carry one's cross means to accept the trials and tribulations of life with faith and to use them as opportunities for growth and transformation. Sheen also highlights the internal struggle that comes with discipleship. He acknowledges that choosing self-denial and humility over pride and selfishness is a daily battle. This battle, though difficult, is what purifies the soul and aligns it more closely with God's will. The hidden joy in sacrifice. While Sheen does not downplay the difficulties of discipleship, he also emphasizes the profound joy that comes from living a life dedicated to Christ. This joy is not the fleeting happiness that comes from worldly success or comfort, but a deep, abiding sense of peace and purpose. He illustrates this joy through stories of individuals who have found meaning in their suffering. Sheen recounts examples of martyrs who faced persecution with unwavering faith, ordinary believers who embraced their struggles with grace, and communities that found strength in collective sacrifice. In each case, the joy they experienced was not despite their hardships, but because they found God's presence in the midst of them. This joy, Sheen explains, is the reward for those who truly live the resurrection. It is a joy that transcends circumstances, rooted in the assurance that their lives are part of a greater plan and that their sacrifices are not in vain. The witness of joyful disciples. Sheen goes on to explain how this joy becomes a powerful witness to the world. In a culture that often equates happiness with material wealth and success, the joy of a disciple who embraces suffering is both countercultural and compelling. It is a joy that draws others to the faith, not through arguments or persuasion, but through the undeniable testimony of a life transformed by love. He challenges his listeners to let their lives be a testament to this joy. Live in such a way, Sheen says, that people cannot help but ask the reason for your hope. This is the essence of evangelization, not merely preaching the gospel with words, but living it out in a way that inspires others to seek the source of that joy for themselves. The fellowship of the cross. Finally, Sheen speaks to the communal aspect of discipleship. He reminds his audience that they are not called to carry their crosses alone. Just as Christ carried his cross for the sake of all humanity, Christians are called to bear one another's burdens. The community of believers becomes a fellowship of the cross, supporting one another in love and sharing in the joys and struggles of discipleship. This fellowship extends beyond the immediate community to the global church. Sheen emphasizes the interconnectedness of all believers and the responsibility each has to pray for and support the suffering members of the body of Christ around the world. In doing so, the church becomes a living embodiment of the resurrection, a witness to the transformative power of faith and love. Looking ahead. As Sheen brings this section to a close, he invites his audience to reflect on their own discipleship journey. He challenges them to embrace the cost of following Christ, to seek the hidden joy in their sacrifices, and to become witnesses to the world through their lives. In doing so, they participate in the ongoing story of redemption, contributing to the sanctification of the world and the building of God's kingdom on earth. In the final part of this series, Sheen will offer practical guidance on how to sustain this life of discipleship, focusing on prayer, community, and the sacraments as sources of strength and renewal for the journey ahead. Sheen's sermon is a gem of Christian theology, but above all, it is a torch that illuminates the path of life for anyone who listens and opens their heart. It is not just a story about Jonah or Jesus. It is the story of each of us with our challenges, our crosses, and ultimately, our joy in resurrection. Let this message touch our hearts and transform our lives into a genuine reflection of God's love.
World that glorifies action often forget the quiet power. What if the secret to not in how much we do, ought, and service? Sound Message invites us to John F. Kennedy and Dag Hammarskjöld by first contemplating ding boldly. Join this delicate dance between action can lead to and purpose.
The action, Fulton Sheen, often glorifies busyness. It is easy to overlook stillness and reflection. We are but to be successful, moving, achieving, but as we rush forward, sense of what it truly means, meaning and purpose. Sheen, in his time, lets us to pause and consider. What if try in constant action? Look at balance between. What if the safe is found in the rhythm and action? And Sheen presents a path to sainthood and with both contemplation. He doesn't just between the two. He deeply intertwined, staining the other. Action is aimless, and contemplation becomes. Sheen's insights, four remarkable figures, John F. Kennedy and Dag Hammarskjöld, for anyone seeking to live impact. The go-go and the come-kai contrasting two-grown world. And the come-kai. The go-go individuals are immersed in action, the external demands. They are the ones who measured by how much tasks they complete, move. Pursuit of achievement, as reflect their actions, but without purpose. The come those who withdraw from the wage in contemplation. Wisdom and insight come prayer, and yet while they may possess, they remain disconnected, able to bring their insights. They are rich in thoughts. Sheen's message is either group on its ownness are brought together, fuels action and reflection that we can significance. Modeled in his life, his followers to come to him and then commanding them to serve. Lies in the harmony between movement, thought, and Gandhi. Non-violent. One of the most balance can be found in to the world, the great leader of non-men who fought for the independence resistance. The layers of Gandhi's deep inner work, activism. Non-violence toward a fierce discipline of before he had to master his ego and impulses. He embraced fasting, leaving that mastering the world's. Gandhi's great and grand speeches alone, personal battles he fought. He believed that if he selfishness, he could overcome theirs. Gandhi's contemplation of the fuel for his life. He lived the truth. One must first change. Through Gandhi's life, thus that action without hollow, true and indeed true leadership, the self. Own our own weaknesses and desire lead others with authenticity. The hidden strength of silence. While Gandhi's life demonstrated self-mastery, John offers a different lesson of contemplation and action. Gandhi's public persona was confidence and leadership, bold vision and generation. Thus that beneath Kennedy's lay a man who suffered silently, marked by physical pain, injuries sustained during his. This pain became an occult he carried throughout his life. Something he rarely spoke about him in profound ways. He used that this hidden strength for Kennedy, pure deepening his wisdom. Sheen suggests is a great away superficialis, leaving behind a pathetic soul. It's not just a burden that made him a better leader. Likens pain to the tongues. Just as this to produce beautiful music, we endure suffering to be. Through Sheen challenges us not as obstacles for growth, embraced with courage and to greater wisdom, and Pope John III. In the third, Sheen finds the balance between contemplation, known for his warmth and sense of humor, embodied the idea that love lead to love for humanity was not found in or theological complete. Simple, heartfelt. Sheen highlights that world flowed from his deep love, divine, that gave him the church, to the Second Vatican Council. John's contemplation, love, translates of kindness and people. His most profound action, simplest motivation, God and love of neighbor. Sense of humor, his self and his deep humility, his understanding that life becomes unconscious joy. Sheen reminds us, always found in grand ideas, simple, everyday acts of heart filled with love. Hammarskjöld, the hidden. The forces is Dag Hammarskjöld, General of the United Nations. Hammarskjöld's life was marked of interiority, strength that few people, unlike the other figures, Hammarskjöld's greatness world. It was spiritual life and personal. Hammarskjöld was rooted in his suffering. He is a reflection of the life of by unjust accusations. His devotion to willingness to give his life all stemmed from this life. In what he did, but his inner sacrifices. Hammarskjöld's life, power comes from within. It is not always the loud leaders who have the great. Sometimes the most profound from those who live in deep spiritual. Greatness is not always hidden in the quiet depth to God and service. And one theme remains balance between contemplation essential for true great. Of the figures he discusses, Kennedy, Pope John, and with deep reflection, suffering, or love, contemplation that gave them meaning and purpose to act. Sheen action become flurry of activity without is rooted in reflection and transformative difference. We must inspiration from within to serve others. Greatness, love and in the end, love and service, discipline. Pope John's love for Hammarskjöld's quiet interior. These figures exemplify true greatness is felt for the sake of others. Came to contemplate into the world to act. Sermon calls us to follow, to balance our lives between and to root everything. Love is the force and service, love. But we can lead lives of meaning, making a lasting impact on us. Harmony of stillness and movement. Sheen's reflections on remind us that greatness action alone, and isolation. 2. Reflection creates a life of truth. As we look to the exanity, Pope John, we see that each of them took, and it was from that they went forth to Sheen's message. If we seek to make us look within, we find the wisdom act. Through love and service that flows in the true path that is open to all. Come and go.
Seriousness and tension have been forgotten. Laughter is not just but a bridge between the Fulton J. Wisdom believed that humor are our greatest truths. Explore Sheen's unique insight more than just a reaction of our spiritual journey. The joy, the wit behind every smile, and
the nature of Sheen's exploration of full appreciation for jokes. He delves into make something funny, reveals a profound truth by noting that humor is born of dignity. Humor arises not when annoyed, but when it's gently balanced. Solemn and dignified his mitre, the tall during religious ceremony, symbol of authority and carries a weight of. Now imagine it worn swing to one side. Makes us laugh, bishop, but because the same person who represents is momentarily brought to small, harmless, we find humor. His dignity is destroyed. His role and stature remain. Slight disruption of the space for laughter, where humor thrives, emotion and reality, and the human. Simply a frivolous escape. It is a reflection of our doings. We belong to two, and the spiritual, of the earth and reflection. When we laugh, we are acknowledging these two aspects of our existence, the small imperfection, higher aspirations, limitations. Insight into humor is a way of embracing. It allows us and weaknesses without dignity. In free moments of imperfection, humanity, not just a reaction in the world and our place in it, as a unique gift to humanity. Reflections on humor, deeply significant, the uniquely human. Thus, when they mimic human behavior, possess the ability to laugh. This ability is a reflect as beings who exist between divine. Take Sheen tells about his dog to put its head between its paws, remaining in this position. Amen. Because the dog and animal human action. There's a deeper truth here as we recognize ourselves. The dog is human, and in that mimicmer. But why Sheen only begin with humans? He explains that humans are the only creatures, both the earthly and the divine. Animals exist soul, driven by instinct. Angels and other divine beings, spiritual realm, untouched physical world. We belong to both reality that gives rise. Humor in this sense, between the material and the spirit, us to step back from the sin, see the world from a high. When we laugh, nations of our earthly existence, recognizing the greater. This is powerful. It can share while grounding us in Sheen's view. Laughter is life's challenges. Through humor, clearer eyes, and its absurdity. Doing so, we come to the divine. Loss of humor. One of Sheen's analysis of humor that society will laugh at itself. Satire was a vital, allowed people to poke fun at, to lighten the mood. But today, satire has been largely replaced with seriousness. This shift is a result of sensitive and political. In our desire not to lose the ability to laugh at the world around us. About ethnicity, religion, human behavior have become. Once we could laugh at the quirk in nature, we now be seen as inappropriate. Shift, Sheen suggests. When we lose ourselves, we lose a vanity. Satire is not meant to. It is meant to be contradictions in life. World with a lighter heart. We risk becoming too on our own importance. Sheen offers a valuable lesson. In a society that often polarized, humor force. It allows differences and see the binds us together. Hence, becomes a way to people, offering understanding. By laugh at ourselves, Sheen to navigate the complexities and humility. From being a trivial distractful tool for healing and humor as a perhaps waits in Sheen's assertion that laughter is a divine. It is not just a human reflection of our connection to God, created in the image of a spark of the divine. Time, we are also bound by physical limits. It is in the talities that humor finds it. Sheen explains that let's see the gap between our highly existence. Ourselves, we are acknowledged without losing sight of our. This kind of laughter is rating. It allows us to see ourselves flawed but capable. In this sense, humor being our earthly limitations is to view our struggles with recognizing that there is something. Is not just a way to cope, it is a way to this insight of why humor is so life. It allows the lens of the human in the midst of our by laughing at ourselves, our flaws. It's part of the journey towards Sheen's reflect and the divine offer a that laughter is not just, it is a way of finding, of seeing the world through us. The laughter, Sheen's as being steeped in gloom. He paints a picture of darkness from art. Eve caught up in this wave of singing songs about heartbreak and they should be full of life, and Sheen doesn't stop at. He offers a solution. In a world laughter becomes a vice. It lifts us out of the reminds us that there is still, even in the midst of life's challenge, Sheen argues, is problems. It is courage and grace. The small things, we are active. To see the life with all is still something. Sheen's is a counterbalance to gloom of the importance of in a world that overwhelming, laughter offers a way to reconnect with the still exist. In one of the most talk, Sheen laughs. He points to where God is said to laugh, a notion that human suggests is not of understanding. Parent watching their child stray understand. God is a reminder of the limit, no matter how far God's presence. His laughter, Sheen's suggestion of his patience, it is a sign that, despite we are all your truth. Talk offers a profound picture of divine love, a rejection of humanity, of our potential, that no matter how lost we are beyond the reach of
Fulton J. Sheen's reflection, powerful and uplifting, often feels heavy and serious, reminds us that laughter is not from life's challenges. Through humor, ourselves more clearly, perfections, without in a whelming, Sheen's word, laughter is a gift, both our humanity and our laughter, that we find the grace to navigate and the joy to celebrate. Consumed by chaos and forget the most profound truth. No matter how never stops pursuing us. Sheen, a master of words, unforgettable journey through the life, man who tried to escape his endlessly chased by God's story of despair, of love to save us. Moments. Join me as we into insights and discover and transform even the most.
Days fast-paced and confident ourselves overwhelmed by whether it's the constant the weight of responsibility of an uncertain future. Escape reality is something meant Fulton Sheen experience, or throughout history, consciousness, to tragic figure of Francis, man of great intellect and victim to this the age of 17, the strain of life's told he wasn't suited for the fulfillment in his pursuit of medicine began to drift. Literature, and it was a opium eater by Thomas to down a path of addiction. Sheen's reached just about a single man's reflection of how many of us for a temporary relief fusion he felt in his life reminds us that these fleeting cost. Thompson's promise spiral ought to avoid the responsibility. This theme today, in a world where, whether it's through technology or even overworking ourselves, lose sight of what truly matters. The message is clear. We provide temporary relief and peace. Find that the escape we seek from life is a grand, dramatic, all seemingly make along the way. Reflects on how these tiny chunks of our lives in ways he reminds us of the story a member of the French Academy in World War II. Captivity, Quitao passed the time by telling the set. What's now random and trivial, a chance encounter, a wrong address, it's unnoticed at the time for entire lives, families, and sitting together as prisoner in regime. The thread woven from the smallest Sheen used for the ways in which our own Francis Thompson's didn't happen overnight. A well-meaning gesture. She gave him of an opium eater, as it would have on her son's lesson. That book sparked him down a path of drug. What seemed like an inner turning point in his life, that our lives are shaped by its deeply. Not realized. The people we meet, the seemingly insignificant, all of these can alter the lives. Sheen urged these moments to recognize decisions can have profound. One of the most powerful is his reflection of love, particularly unexpected place of Francis Thompson. It became his lifeline during Sheen pain moment, describing Thompson, his health. He wandered the streets of London broken, finding in this state, kindness would leave an indole. This woman medically describes as the coronet of spring when no one else would. Shelter and companionship lived a life on the margin. In her, Thompson sustenance, but a sense of humor away by his addiction. Retelling of this relationship, empathy and compassion doesn't present the woman as a saint, but as a fellow by her own struggles and support. Them all was enough to keep time when he had nothing else to. This theme of unexpected to Sheen's message can come from the most. It doesn't matter who it's given, what matters its purest form. Thompson's story act that even in our darkest can find us. It may be a fleeting encounter or someone, but when it does, it has everything. One of them is Thompson's life was a relationship he often tried. Sheen explores the poem. The Hound of describes a man fleeing from God's love. The God, like a hound, chases the poet through the dark life, refusing to let. Sheen's interpretation of this poem on the nature of divine. Thompson, like so many, that he could outrun God in addiction, in the thinking that he could escape the pain of his existence. Far he ran, known to despair. Pursue him. This means is not one of punishment, unconditional love. in Thompson's poem is to bring us back to him, for God to stand by elves. His love come out to follow us even lives. Heaven speaks to a universal run from the very thing we it's out of fear, shame, control. We push away us. But Sheen, how far we go, stop pursuing us. Patient and ever present when we finally stop run be found. Moments in Sheen's sermon is Thompson's near suicide. Addiction, poverty, and hope saw no way out. To buy the opium that he prepared to take the fatal, like the only escape from the pain him. Despair. Thompson felt yet firm on his own, taking the final dose of opium. Sheen draws on this main intervention. A remote hours, there is always that stopped Thompson, Hebelton, a poet who him. Whether it was gestation of something greater, Thompson's life story to illustrate the hope that many of us becomes overwhelming, out, no possibility. But Sheen reminds us, utterly alone, there's over us, guiding us. This presence may come in the form of a ranger or a mysterious in our tracks, but it brings us away back to This part of Sheen's sermon is the resilience of the human soul. How lost we feel. There is always hope. His life, which could have ended, was instead given a to find redemption, lease. As years of Francis Thompson's the central theme of divine, as the key years of suffering and isolation found solace in the child. Sheen's girl named Daisy encountered during his time at Daisy's small acts of a gift of raspberries and healing for Thompson captures the delicate sorrow that comes with love. Heart, which had been hardened, began to soften in the love. But even as of this connection, of the pain that love is the ambassador, quotes Thompson, expressing his deep love that we hold dear. Love is both the greatest challenge we face. The possibility of deep connections us to the risk of loss. This fear, love remains. It is through love, healing, and ultimate Thompson, love, and on the streets, a child's unwavering pursuit of God pulled him out of the darkness. Sheen's powerful reminder that love binds us to the divine, connects us to one another. In love, we find not one, but the promise of some eternal.
As we read, one truth remains clear. How far we run, love. Fulton Sheen's word, darkest corners of our life never ceases its pursuit. Moments of vulnerability, redemption. Wonders, the innocence of a child pulling us back from the brink. So as we hear Sheen's powerful message, to many splendored things, us together and leads us next time, may you never stop believing.
Senior Sterling and Brother Priest. All. Do you realize are consistent in this mission? You will be exposed. And I should that they will be like the professor who traveled around with chauffeur. And the chauffeur always said to him that I have heard that lecture times. And I could give it just. You give the lesson up in your chauffeur's audience. The chauffeur gave a perfect, but at the end, hand went up. The question that I should like to ask you, when you mix that H2O2 and then compare it with how do you get the equation? The stupid question in my life. To show you how stupid it is, my chauffeur to answer it. The subject of this eve will be bring home to you the supreme before us, the our destiny. And I will begin by giving voice, because heaven or hell is before us when we make for much of our life. One of these stories will be Paris and the other and both of them are my own experiences. I had gone down from Brussels to preach a sermon on the Sunday of February, and I stayed there in a well. I complimented him, and then I asked him if he would before in my life. Anyone else? Stick me with a pin, too. Down the table in this smoke. And he said, do you ever have this life? Man or one good woman? I thank. And then he went on. He said, now they're over there at that table, break a lump of sugar and a cup of. She couldn't for her. How mean her husband was. Well, she did, and I get 12 months. Said this morning, I bundled concierge, and she gave me the dear puppy. If you refuse until our anniversary, I shall commit suicide by. Now, may I permit her to live with me? I said, no good may come from it. Commit suicide. It got to be about 11 for the hotel. I'm not going to. I'm beginning to think that maybe you are, and now you tell me you're going up. Well, I said, there's art. Besides, there's a great, the Basilica to the, and every 1,000 men in prayer. Come with me. I said, I will leave when you go. I intend to stay all night. He made no move to go, and I read Mass. Walking down the hill of Montmartre, he said, you stay in Paris and teach me. It's the first time I contacted goodness. I agreed to guard at 8 o'clock. He came in with the one that was involved in this. And he said, the three of us. No, this is not a. You must make it. You were going out with that woman, or you were going out. He walked up and down the court, came back and said, go out with her. And that's the end of the story. The choice was made at a great grace. Please God, that night at Montmartre. I spent about 7 or 8 years in parish in London, district. Church door this particular morning. It was a cold, heavy, belly, and how did you happen to be here? Where am I, Father? I said, oh, Father? Yeah, but not anymore. You were drunk. Yes, she said, I was drunk. Well, I said the stuff. Because they don't like something. What were you running away? She said, 3 men. In love with each of them, and they were beginning to. I got drunk. And pointing to a billboard, church on the walls of the office, I said, is that your picture over? Yes, I'm leading lady in that. Made a cup of coffee for her, for she was here. She said afternoon and thanked me. I will on one condition, that you do not ask me. I said, go to confession. I want you to promise me faithfully, ask me to go to confession. I said, I promise that I will not ask you to. afternoon before matinee, and I said, we have church. See them. As I took her down church, into a confessional. Later I gave her her veil into adoration this very hour. So then another choice had to be made. A choice that each of us is making. Now let me choices. One from the Old Testament. And be reading from English Bible, which is by all our texts. God, I ought of life, blessing or curse. And you and your descendants will live. Love the Lord your God, or else, if you choose evil. Now from the New Testament, from Matthew. Remotely possible that I have my reference, but I guess anything. Lord and Savior is speaking. Enter, but the gate is to perdition, and there is plenty of road. Go that. Life is small, and the road, those who find it. This was days when the city was surrounded. It was the great gate that opened up, a very narrow gate, and narrow that lives. Saying there's a broad gate, and there's a narrow gate who go in. Now suppose it be, but I will not. I will not is to choose. No one ever decides in life going to be ignorant. He just no is going to be. He just does not. White fences, they become because we do not. The mole which had eyes to see, not to use those eyes. It in judgment said way. An animal in one of the caves of Kentucky. The seemingly has perfect. If you cut the eye, all of the nerves desiccated. It was the loss of vision. So choice. Even choose. I think the choice that was offered on the sunlit portico that he brought our blessed Lord. Our blessed Lord had sweat the night before, scourged for a day. When I visited, I noticed on the wall of Pilate, example a B, beta, then the Roman numeral, and then other rocks in the pictorium of his plague. The B being Paul in that B was king. The Lord was brought down. They mocked him. They gave him a reed, purple robe, before him mockingly, king and their Lord. Now him out on this great popular hero. Let us remember that. He was not just a cry. He was rather a revolutionist. And there was in Jerusalem because of servitude of the Romans. He was anti-establishment. He was violent. He tried to overthrow the Roman. Brings out on the. There is even some in the early manuscripts that the name Bar means in Abbas is rabbi. So the Father, therefore, was really saying, "You, Jesus, the Son, or the Son, Barabbas, really crucify him." In important moments of our life, thing for the hero, or we are who for the moment, or to put it in going to one of two cities, the 4th century wrote the city of God, did with the city of Eden. In the last book of Scripture, cities that are described. This is, I think, one of the whole books of modern times. There's very, very different things in it, which we'll relate, really. One is the city of Babylon, and the other, the historical Babylon. But the corrupt city of evil, John describes it. That held the 7 bowls. I will show you the judgment enthroned above the ocean. The kings of the earth have committed of her fornication, men all drunk. Spirit, he carried me away, a woman mounted on, which was covered with blood. She wore scarlet and gold cup. He is in the foulness of her fornication, and written on her forehead with a secret meaning, Babylon the Great, mother of horrors, and every with the blood of God's people, those who had borne be at the end of time. Come and I will show you the wife of the Lamb, the church. All of us will be met in heaven one of another. Carried me away to a great high mount, Jerusalem. Come, God, priceless jewel, clear as crystal. It is a great wall with 12 angels, and arms of the 12 Israel. So ultimately, at the end, chosen either Christ or there will be for in heaven there will be the bride, which is the church. Characters who have made this choice. St. Augustine, the early church. He was a very learned man, to be good, and he often prayed, "Dear Lord." We all say that prayer. And one day he was with his friend in a garden, and the way of the Spirit following the way of the flesh. A voice, the voice, léger, take up the book, and he read Romans, not in chamberings, but in obedience to the Spirit. And the God chose that day to follow Christ, the great saints of the church. Had this choice. 5 or 6 centuries, teacher of antiquity, and he was constantly telling there was an absolute in morality, and there was against the state. He was condemned to death. A chance to escape. There was influence in his prestige. He would not escape, and they gave him the hemlock. Drank it. As he was losing consciousness, he said, "I owe to Asclepius." Using to escape, he said, "Every way God." And the pagans. An interesting story from the. There was a famine in the city of Bethlehem. And went in, was non-Jewish, and she during a famine, and she took with her 2. They nailed daughters-in-law in her hand. And the other. And Naomi said, "I'm going back again. My God, country shall be my country. I shall go with you." Went back to her pagan people. Ruth became the great King David, who forced the Lord. So this on the choice that you are. Never be discouraged. You have plenty of help. Goes on. Describe the difficulties that we have and the hopes of some of the great sculpture. Michelangelo, the tomb was never finished. What you see in Florence are 4 struggling to be released ourselves. There's choices before us. We're striving upon us. Old habit, weakness of will, but like these characters, we hope for a that is cold and The statue of King Florence to ruined it. Beautiful piece of Carrara marble. Passed by and saw that marble. The studio applied and the skill, the and so though they may have been hacked by serpents, the great finger and hand, and finally, the young woman, having seen her divine, put in her lap as a kind of a, and yet she's not broken. Sadness, peace, resignation to God's will, and for she sees that sacrifice was pledged to her son and to her son. And as we one of the alien influences of those we will, as we struggle, cast down by trial, discipline, purification. We have Christ is in our soul. You're good people. You're not good. Oh, you're not as good as you would want to. You have come here because you want to be. Okay, and we're good. In these talks, by step, and consolation. The title of this telecast, inspired by something. I was 6 years old. I was just a boy, and the pastor, they were cleaning the church, and he said, he gave me a great big missal that we used during Mass. And he said to church and then into the rectory. It was very heavy, boy, and a long aisle. So, as aisle, I began running to make it. And I was coming into the church with a one bundle, I remember, into her. Tomatoes, I fell over to the big Latin book. Why don't you read the other boys? Well, my introduction to come, I will merely be saying that rather divided into people today. There is one go-go group, and the group. The go-go group, a new breed. The come, old breed. Go, demand that we go in. We live in a secular universe. Just come apart. Get away from the world. It's wicked. Go-go's God is. This is the group that believes clock. And this pendulum. Waters without a bed to the bed with no waters in. It would be wonderful together. They should be together. Because of the life of our blessed, we find that this public life words of it were go. An idea, inspiration, then dynamism, fluidity, serving the secular world. Should be kept together. What do you find? Saints. About modern saints, not plaster saints. I'm just how much time I can give each saint. 15 minutes, 4 saints for each saint. I'm not going to have my life of the saint that you. First, Gandhi. Great inspiration of Gandhi is non-violence to others with violence. He said, after reading, as far as that is concerned, I am a Christian. One of the war against others made war against themselves. Before he preached, violent against everything in it that leaned towards 37 years of age. And he kept it. And he said, I felt human love narrow me. And I went from a violence thing. Better about fasting than I think temporary world. He related prayer and fasting. Prayer, he said, attaches us from creatures. And then he gave a new concept. He said, fasting has great on those whom we love. It will not have a great effect. It will on others. He wanted, first of all, by his to share of his own people. And the only way that he was by of hunger. And after himself, then he began preachers. And for what reason? For being the untouchable. Those in India, one was not even to touch. And he fasted. Gandhi did. Are the men who came and then went. It's time to make us a saint. Only much.
Bishop Christian Broadcasting, radio shows, and programs. Emmy Award, Bishop God for a good season.
This, the entire program, and that hates to be intermittence. Program in which there's no inter. Thanks for listening, sponsors. Bye now.
Public speaking is an art form, but few have mastered it with the grace, wit, and spiritual depth. Fulton J. Sheen, a man whose words carried the weight of wisdom and the fire of conviction, Sheen captivated audiences not only through his eloquence, but through the authenticity that radiated from his every sentence. What made him stand out was not just his command of language, but his ability to connect deeply with his listeners, transforming speeches into moments of genuine inspiration. In this essay, we dive into the timeless principles that guided Sheen's speaking mastery, uncovering the lessons that continue to resonate in the world of communication today. When standing in front of an audience, many people make a very common mistake. They become different from their true selves. Tone changes, their posture shifts, and they seem to transform into a distant version of themselves in an attempt to deliver a flawless speech. But according to Fulton Sheen, this is the biggest error a speaker can make. For Sheen, public speaking is not about striving for perfection. It's about maintaining naturalness and authenticity. That's where the true power of speech lies. Imagine you are sitting in a hall, listening to a speaker. If that person speaks stiffly, without emotion, would you feel engaged? Most likely, you won't remember much from that speech because it lacks the essential connection with you. Connection that comes from words spoken from the heart, expressed naturally, like a conversation between friends. This is something Sheen understood very well from his early days as a student. Sheen shares that when he was first selected for his college debate team, he was confident in his speaking ability. However, when his coach told him that he was the worst speaker they had ever had, Sheen realized that the ability to think and the ability to convey those thoughts are two completely different things. Sheen had a sharp mind, but his delivery lacked naturalness and felt distant. This became a turning point and the first lesson Sheen learned on his path to becoming an excellent speaker. Naturalness is the key to opening the door to connection with the audience. Why is naturalness so important? Because when you speak naturally, the audience doesn't just hear your words. They feel your presence, your beliefs, your emotions, and the sincerity behind your message. It's as if you're inviting them to embark on a journey with you, where they are not just passive listeners, but active participants. At that moment, you're not just speaking, you're communicating with both your soul and intellect. Fulton Sheen didn't just recognize this, he turned it into a foundational principle of his communication style. Don't change when you step in front of the public. Stay true to your natural self, and the audience will feel everything you intend to convey. One of the standout lessons from Fulton Sheen's approach to public speaking is the importance of thorough preparation. However, what makes Sheen's method truly remarkable is how he transforms that preparation into a source of flexibility and spontaneity. Unlike many speakers who meticulously write out every word of their speech, Sheen took a different approach. He would only jot down key points, and then, in a bold move, tear up his notes, forcing himself to internalize the material and speak from his heart. At first glance, this might seem risky. After all, tearing up your notes might leave you vulnerable to forgetting something important or losing your train of thought. But for Sheen, this was the key to liberating himself from the constraints of a script. By refusing to rely on pre-written words, he trained himself to think on his feet, allowing him to adjust his speech in real time based on the reactions and needs of his audience. This technique didn't just show confidence, it allowed for a more dynamic, engaging presentation, where Sheen could weave in new ideas, respond to the moment, and interact with his listeners in a way that felt authentic and unscripted. The lesson here is clear. True preparation is about mastery, not memorization. When you've truly prepared, when you've immersed yourself in the subject matter, you don't need a script. You become the script. This kind of preparation gives you the freedom to be fluid, to adapt, and to engage in ways that a rigidly planned speech can never allow. Sheen didn't just memorize facts. He created an intellectual atmosphere where ideas flowed naturally, making each talk feel more like a conversation than a formal presentation. Imagine sitting in the audience, watching someone who isn't confined to their notes but is instead speaking with such depth and understanding that they seem to pull ideas from the air around them. This is the power of true preparation. and it's why Sheen was able to captivate his audience time and time again. He didn't just talk to people, connected with them, drawing from a reservoir of knowledge he had carefully built, and sharing it in a way that felt spontaneous yet profound. Fulton Sheen's method of tearing up his notes was not a reckless act, but rather a bold statement about the kind of speaker he aspired to be. One who had internalized his message so deeply that it became a part of him. Preparation gave him the confidence to be free and the freedom to be creative, a lesson that any speaker or anyone seeking to communicate effectively can learn from. Sincerity, the bedrock of trust and persuasion. Among all the principles Fulton Sheen emphasized, perhaps none was as important as sincerity. To Sheen, sincerity wasn't just a quality that made a speaker likable, it was the very foundation of effective communication. Without it, a speech, no matter how well prepared or eloquently delivered, falls flat. The audience may hear the words, but they won't feel them. Sheen understood that true connection comes not from mere articulation, but from the depth of belief behind the words. In one of his memorable anecdotes, Sheen reflected on the origin of the word sincere. He recounted how, in ancient Rome, craftsmen would sometimes fill imperfections in marble statues with wax to make them appear flawless. However, the most prized statues were labeled sincera, meaning without wax, perfect and pure in their natural state. Sheen drew a powerful parallel between these statues and public speaking. A sincere speaker is one who is unvarnished, who doesn't try to mask their imperfections or hide behind pretense. They present themselves as they truly are, genuine and honest. But why is sincerity so critical? Sheen believed that audiences have an innate ability to detect when a speaker is being authentic. They may not always remember every fact or detail of a speech. They will remember how the speaker made them feel. And when a speaker's words are backed by genuine belief, that feeling is one of trust. The audience isn't just hearing information, they're being persuaded, emotionally engaged, and led to reflect on what is being said. Consider for a moment what it feels like to listen to someone who speaks from the heart. There's a certain gravitas in their words, a weight that cannot be faked. The audience may not know all the technical details, but they instinctively recognize when the speaker is fully committed to their message. This is the essence of what Sheen preached. Sincerity turns a speech into more than just an exchange of information. It transforms it into a personal experience, one that resonates deeply with the listener. In a world where we are constantly bombarded with noise, speeches, advertisements, and messages that often feel superficial, sincerity cuts through. It reaches us at a core human level. And Sheen knew this well. His speeches weren't just well-rehearsed performances. They were extensions of his beliefs, his values, and his character. When a speaker is sincere, their words carry the undeniable ring of truth. And truth, when spoken with conviction, has the power to change minds and move hearts. Fulton Sheen's lesson on sincerity is timeless. If you want to be a truly effective speaker or communicator of any kind, you must first believe in what you are saying. Authenticity cannot be manufactured. It comes from knowing your message deeply, feeling it genuinely, and delivering it without pretense or artifice. The most powerful speeches are those where the words and the person behind them are inseparable, where the message is a reflection of the speaker's own inner truth. Humor and flexibility, turning adversity into opportunity. Public speaking is often seen as a performance where precision and control are paramount. But Fulton Sheen understood something more profound. The ability to adapt to the unexpected is what sets great speakers apart from the good ones. No matter how well prepared a speaker may be, unplanned moments, whether it's forgetting a line, technical issues, or audience reactions, are inevitable. How a speaker handles these moments can make all the difference. For Sheen, humor and flexibility were not just strategies. They were essential tools in transforming adversity into opportunity. Sheen was no stranger to such unpredictable moments, and one of his most memorable stories is about a speech he gave in Ireland. During that speech, he began reciting a poem that he knew by heart. Halfway through, he forgot the next line. Imagine the pressure, standing in front of an eager audience, mid-speech, and suddenly the words disappear from your memory. Many would have panicked or tried to cover up the mistake, But Sheen, with his characteristic poise, acknowledged the mistake with humor, telling the audience he had forgotten the lines. This candid admission could have been a disaster for a less skilled speaker, but Sheen turned it into a moment of connection. By admitting his human error and injecting humor into the situation, he disarmed the tension in the room. Instead of seeing it as a failure, the audience saw it as a genuine and relatable moment. In that vulnerability, Sheen didn't lose credibility. He gained it. His ability to laugh at himself and carry on showed the audience that he was just like them. Imperfect, confident enough to embrace the imperfection. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Perfection is not required for effective communication. In fact, the imperfections, the unexpected slips, the moments where things don't go as planned, often provide the richest opportunities to connect with the audience. When a speaker can laugh at themselves and maintain composure in the face of mistakes, they become more relatable, more human. The audience isn't just watching a performance anymore. They are witnessing an authentic interaction, one that feels spontaneous and genuine. Humor plays a crucial role in this. Sheen understood that a well-placed joke, especially when it's directed at oneself, has the power to diffuse tension and build rapport. It's a way of saying to the audience, I'm not here to impress you with my perfection. I'm here to share something real with you. And in those moments, the connection between speaker and listener deepens. The audience doesn't just respect the speaker, they start rooting for them. But beyond humor, flexibility is key. Sheen's ability to roll with the punches, to adapt in real time to whatever challenges arose, was a hallmark of his speaking style. This flexibility came from his deep preparation. Because he didn't rely on memorizing a rigid script, Sheen could pivot easily when something went awry. His talks weren't confined to a strict set of lines. They were dynamic conversations, shaped by the energy in the room and the moment itself. In a world where many fear public speaking because of the possibility of making mistakes, Sheen's approach is liberating. He showed that mistakes are not the enemy. They are an opportunity. A true speaker is not someone who never falters, but someone who knows how to turn faltering into a chance to connect more deeply with their audience. Fire and light, the symbiotic power of truth and passion. In the realm of public speaking, there are few metaphors more potent than the one Fulton Sheen used to describe the heart of a powerful speech: fire and light. According to Sheen, every effective speech must have these two essential elements working together. The light represents the truth, clarity of the message being conveyed, while the fire symbolizes the passion, the emotional intensity that drives the speaker, and in turn ignites the audience. Why this comparison? Sheen understood that a speech without truth is hollow, lacking the substance to resonate with people's minds. But at the same time, truth alone is not enough. It must be delivered with fire, an inner conviction and passion that makes the audience feel the weight of what's being said. This blend of truth and passion is what allows a speech to transcend mere information delivery and become a transformative experience for the listener. Imagine sitting in a room, listening to someone speak about a topic they deeply believe in. Their words are not just accurate, they are alive, burning with the heat of their commitment. You can feel their energy, their belief, their urgency. That fire is contagious. When you hear a speaker who is truly passionate, it stirs something within you. You don't just understand their message intellectually, you feel it on an emotional and even visceral level. For Sheen, this was the secret to moving an audience. Fire and light are inseparable. If you have only one of these elements, the speech falters. Cold delivery of facts may enlighten the audience, but it won't inspire them. Likewise, a speech filled with raw emotion but lacking in solid truth may stir emotions, but will leave the audience without something substantial to hold on to. It's the balance of the two, clarity of truth and the intensity of passion, that gives a speech its power. This principle can be applied to every type of communication, not just public speaking. In our daily lives, when we wish to persuade or move others, we must first believe in the truth of our message. If we are not convinced ourselves, how can we expect anyone else to be? But beyond that, we must also convey that truth with passion. We must be on fire with the belief that what we are saying matters, not just to us, but to those we are speaking to. Fulton Sheen lived by this principle. When he spoke about his faith, it was clear that he wasn't just reciting doctrines or teaching from a detached intellectual standpoint. He was living what he preached. His speeches were imbued with an unmistakable zeal, fervor that made his audience sit up, take notice, and feel the same passion he felt. This is why Sheen's speeches were more than just sermons. They were moments of deep connection, where the audience didn't just listen, they experienced the truth he was sharing. Fire and light are the soul of any great speech. Without truth, there is no substance. Without passion, there is no movement. Fulton Sheen's mastery lay in his ability to balance both, creating speeches that were as enlightening as they were inspiring. He didn't just speak to the mind, he spoke to the heart. In doing so, he moved people in ways that few speakers ever do. For those of us striving to communicate effectively, Sheen's message is clear. Know your truth and burn with it. Let your passion be the vehicle that delivers that truth, and in doing so, you will not only inform your audience, you will transform them. Spiritual foundations, the divine power behind public speaking. For Fulton Sheen, public speaking was never merely a technical exercise. It was a spiritual vocation. At the core of his approach to oratory was the belief that true power in public speaking comes from a higher source. Sheen was a man of deep faith, and he understood that the ability to influence, to inspire, and to move an audience didn't just come from preparation or skill. It came from a divine connection, from spiritual discipline. In his eyes, the most effective communication was not only crafted with the mind, but was also deeply rooted in the soul. Sheen often spoke of the importance of prayer before delivering a speech. For him, prayer wasn't just a formality. It was the act of drawing strength, clarity, and inspiration from God. It was a way to align his message with a higher purpose and ensure that his words carried the weight of something greater than himself. Sheen believed that great orators don't just speak. They channel a message from above, and the humility to seek divine guidance was key to unlocking this power. Imagine for a moment that you are about to give a speech, standing before an eager audience, knowing that the words you speak may influence, guide, or even change the lives of those listening. For Sheen, the magnitude of that responsibility could only be approached with reverence and faith. He believed that to move hearts and minds, a speaker must first be grounded in something beyond personal ambition or intellect. The words must come from a place of deep truth, one that transcends the speaker's own limited perspective. Sheen famously referred to this connection as drawing from fires stolen from heaven. It's a powerful metaphor, suggesting that the greatest speeches, those that truly leave a lasting impact, are infused with divine fire. This fire, once stolen or borrowed from the divine, allows the speaker to communicate with an authority and passion that no amount of rehearsal or technical expertise can replicate. It is this divine inspiration that separates the merely competent speakers from the truly great one. The fire that burns in the heart of a speaker must be lit by something higher than themselves. And for Sheen, that source was God. In a world where public speaking is often treated as a skill to be mastered through techniques and strategies, Sheen's emphasis on the spiritual dimension offers a refreshing perspective. He reminds us that true oratory is about more than mastering the mechanics of communication. It's about speaking from the depths of one's soul, with a sense of purpose that transcends the self. It's about recognizing that our words have the power to heal, inspire, and transform, not because of our own abilities, but because we are conduits of something far greater. Sheen's speeches were not just performances, they were acts of spiritual service. His preparation involved more than research and practice. It involved prayer, reflection, and a deep sense of responsibility to the divine. When he spoke, he wasn't simply trying to convey information or persuade an audience. He was delivering a message that he believed was entrusted to him by God. And this gave his words a sense of gravity and power few others could match. For those of us who aspire to be effective communicators, Sheen's message is clear. Truly move an audience, we must first seek inspiration from a higher source. Whether it's through prayer, meditation, or quiet reflection, we must connect with the deeper truths that guide our lives. Only then can we speak with the kind of authority, passion, and sincerity that resonates with the hearts and minds of others. In conclusion, Sheen's approach to public speaking was not just about delivering a message, it was about embodying a message. His words were imbued with spiritual fire, and because of that, they had the power to light a fire in those who listened. For Sheen, greatest speeches were not just informative or entertaining. They were transformative because they were rooted in the divine.
Peace be to you. This universe of ours is a free universe. It is a universe of character making, of soul making. Almighty God has placed into our hands, think of it, the power to make ourselves saints or devils. It is up to us. There are some laws that we cannot disobey. For example, the law of gravitation and certain biological laws like circulation of blood. But in a moral universe, we are free either to obey the laws of God or to disobey them, just as we are perfectly free, for example, to obey the laws of health or to disobey them. What then makes a thing good? What makes a thing bad? What makes a thing good? A thing is good when it attains the purpose for which it was made. I have before me now a stopwatch. I'm talking to you without any notes that are written out, merely developing ideas that have been given to those who are interested in these ideas for many, many years. Therefore, I have to have a watch before me in order to decide when I should stop. Is it a good watch? How will I know whether it is good? By asking, what is the purpose of a watch? The purpose of a watch is to keep time. Does it keep time? Yes. Therefore, it is a good watch. Now let us apply that to our ultimate end. Why were we made? What is the purpose of living? The purpose of living is to be supremely happy. How do we become supremely happy? By attaining the life and truth and love which is God. Anything I do, therefore, that helps me to attain that goal or purpose is good. Alongside of me is an organ. It is not in the church, it is in my office. Rather in my home. As I talk to you, I am looking at the notes on that organ. Which note is good and which note is bad? Which note is right and which note is wrong? One cannot say that any particular note is right and any particular note is wrong. But what makes any note right or wrong? Its correspondence to a standard. Once I have a piece of music before me, I know what I ought to do, what note I should hit, what note I ought not to hit. So too, we have a moral standard within us, which is the conscience. And what is good and bad is in relationship to that standard, which is not of our own making. We do not draw our own maps. decide that the distance from Chicago to New York will be so and so. We do not arbitrarily set our own watches. We set them by a standard outside of us. When we buy any material, we do not decide that a yard, for example, will be 24 inches instead of 36. So a good, therefore, is that which helps us in relationship to the attainment of purpose and goals and destinies which are in accordance with right reason. What makes a thing bad? Well, here is a pencil. Is it a good pencil? Yes, it writes. That is why it was made. Is it a good can opener? It certainly is not. Suppose I use it as a can opener. What happens? First of all, I do not open the can. I do not attain the purpose for which I use the pencil. And secondly, I destroy the pencil. Now, if I, for example, decide to do certain things which I ought not to do, I do not attain the purpose that I hope to attain. For example, becoming an alcoholic does not make me happy. And furthermore, I destroy myself, just as I destroy the pencil in using it to open a can. When I disobey God, I do not make myself very happy on the inside. And I certainly destroy any piece of soul that I ought to have. Evil, you see, is not positive. Evil is either an excess or a defect of what is good. An excess or a defect. Food is good. Too little of it is bad. Too much of it is bad. Drink is good. Too little of it is bad. Too much of it is bad. They're never working toward one goal. It's no wonder there are so many psychotics and neurotics in our world. They're just rehashing a lot of old errors and giving them new labels. Calling some of the old errors very novel. But that's only because they do not know what is ancient. Not only is our reason weak, but also our will. Even when we know what is right, how hard it is sometimes to do it. We are besieged by temptations. We often feel very much like Gacy. He said that he often wondered why he was one man, because he felt there was enough evil in him and goodness to make both a rogue and a gentleman. St. Augustine said, that he may have occasion to quote this again, whatever I am not what I ought to be. Looking back, therefore, on what we are, we have to admit that our reason is weak. Our will is feeble. Our mind is dark. Could we tell? Certainly there are many who make claims to be messengers from God. Reason has to set up certain standards, even before there is any revelation. We just simply cannot allow some man to come upon the stage of history and say, listen to me, I am from God. Or I had a revelation. I once received a telegram from someone, and the telegram read, report to Port 53, New York Harbor, to receive illumination from the Holy Spirit. Well, I'm very sure that individual who sent it, whoever he was, believed that he had a revelation, but we cannot accept the revelation of any individual who claims merely that he has one. We cannot accept, for example, someone who says, I've got a book here An angel wrote it for me. Why, this world of ours will be filled with crackpots. If Skyjack came to this country from Mars, we would say, show me your passport. How do I know you are from Mars? So too, if anyone is coming from God with a revelation for our reason and the strength for our will, reason is going to impose certain tests, and these tests are three. And they're tests that can be verified by reason and by history. First, whoever comes should be pre-announced. Two, he should work miracles in attestation of the fact that he is a messenger. Third, nothing that he ever teaches or reveals to us should be contrary to human reason, though it may be above it. Those are three tests. What's the standard? What's the measuring rod? First we say, anyone who comes should be pre-announced. After all, brides pre-announce their wedding. Automobile manufacturers tell us when a new model would appear, and if God is going to send someone to this earth, certainly the least that God can do is to let us know, I'm sending someone. Is there no one that can step out? Up to this moment, you see, we have not regarded Christ as any different from any other messenger from God. Now one steps out of the ranks. What is your name? My name is Jesus Christ. Were you ever pre-announced? Are there any historical records long before your coming describing the details of your existence? Are there documents attesting to the work that you would do and the purpose of your coming? He is the only one that can answer, yes. So we say to the others, step back. You may be interesting, but you do not satisfy my first test. You were not pre-announced. And that's the least that God could do. You have only your own word. But we are interested in the person of Christ. He says he was pre-announced. In that case, we will have to study the documents. That will be the subject of the next